Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. This is the Daily Score. America's fragile republic is now under siege from the Biden regime. Here we will be chronicling on a daily basis just how America is being dismantled. The regime's first 24 hours at the time of this recording aren't even complete yet, and he has thus far killed the Keystone Pipeline, destroyed the 1776 Commission, rejoined the Paris Agreement, and halted border construction. We are going to discuss all four of these today and what it means for America. First up today is the Keystone Pipeline. What does it do for our economy? What about Canada's economy? How will it affect us in the long run now that it is being cancelled? So what is the Keystone Pipeline? Well, it's a 1,700-mile, 2,735-kilometer pipeline that was planned to carry roughly 800,000 barrels of oil a day from Alberta to the Texas Gulf Coast, passing through Montana, South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas, and even Oklahoma. Keystone Pipeline President Richard Pryor said well over 1,000 jobs, the majority of them unionized, will be eliminated in the next coming weeks. We will have to begin a safe and orderly shutdown of construction, he said. In a further report, the Keystone Pipeline, well, this project was initially proposed over a decade ago. It would sustain 11,000 U.S. jobs in 2021, including 8,000 union jobs. This would generate over $1.6 billion in gross wages. Under President Trump, the United States was energy independent. Gas was down to $2.10 a gallon. We hadn't seen that in all the 8 years prior to President Trump coming into office. We already see prices of gas shooting up, especially in the Pennsylvania area. They're up 60 cents as of yesterday. The stated reason for this is Biden thinks that we are producing too great a greenhouse gases, even though under President Trump, greenhouse gases were the lowest they had been in recorded history. Within just a few hours, Biden destroyed the 1776 Commission. Now, what did the 1776 Commission do? Well, let's take a look at why President Trump established this. President Trump established the commission last year partly in response to the national movement in which statues of slaveholders or colonial figures were removed or defaced. The statues involving the Founding Fathers and the people long admired for their accomplishments. The most common charge leveled against the Founding Fathers, and hence against the country itself, is that they were hypocrites and didn't believe in their stated principles, and therefore the country they built was essentially built upon a lie. We know this is enormously untrue and has done enormous damage, especially in the recent years, with a devastating effect to our civic unity and social fabric. The reality is that not only did the foundation of our republic plant the seeds of the death of slavery in America, it planted them for all over the world because the rest of the world followed the United States' example. Let's take a look here and see what the 1776 Commission report actually does and says here. Now, this is a commission led by a number of prominent scholars, including Larry Ann, Victor David Hanson, and Charles Kiesler. This report rightly calls for a national review of education to teach the future U.S. citizens the founding principles enshrined in the Declaration of Independence and in the Constitution, and identified historical and modern challenges in those key principles. America and no other nation has perfectly lived up to the universal truths of equality, liberty, justice, and government by the consent of the people. But no other nation before America ever stated those truths in a formal basis for its politics, and none has ever strived harder or done more to achieve this. The Biden regime is getting away from our founding documents, our founding principles. By doing this, Biden is continuing the indoctrination of yours and my children through false revisionist history. I'm not sure what's worse, the fact that this election is still so questioned, or the fact that 68 million people actually voted for this guy. The 1776 report specifically calls out historian Howard Zinn and the 1619 Project for preventing students from seeing the humanity, goodness, and benevolence in America's historical figures. Young readers are instead presented with a distorted version of United States history according to the 1776 report. Historical revisionism that tramples honest scholarship and historical truth shames Americans by highlighting only the sins of their ancestors, and teaches claims of systemic racism that can only be eliminated by more discrimination. It's an ideology intended to manipulate opinions more than educate minds, the report reads. Unfortunately, this factual report was removed from the White House website following the transition. Fortunately, you can still find this report though by looking at the archived Trump White House website. Now let's take a look at the Paris Climate Agreement. Why did President Trump exit from it, and why are we now back in it? Let's take a look at why the Paris Agreement was so damaging to the United States. It was very costly and ineffective. In fact, so much so that it would do close to nothing to addressing actual climate change. If carried out, the energy regulations agreed to in the Paris Accord by the Obama administration would destroy hundreds of thousands of jobs, harm American manufacturing, and destroy $2.5 trillion in gross domestic product by the year 2035. By President Trump withdrawing from this agreement, he removed a massive barrier to achieving the 3% economic growth that us Americans are accustomed to. In terms of the climate benefits produced by Paris, well, there practically are none. Even if every country met its own commitments, and that's a large if, considering China has already underreported its carbon dioxide emissions, there are little to no repercussions for it failing to meet its obligations. The changes in the Earth's temperature would be almost undetectable. The Paris Climate Agreement was an epic monumental waste of the taxpayer money. In climate negotiations leading up to the Paris conference, participants called for a green climate fund that would collect $100 billion per year by 2020. The goal of this fund would be to subsidize green energy and pay for other climate adaptation and migration programs in poor nations. The Obama administration actually ended up shipping $1 billion, yes, that's billion with a B, in taxpayer dollars to fund this without congressional approval. And to make matters worse, some of the top recipients of these government-funded climate programs have been in the past some of the most corrupt, which means that the corrupt government collects the funds, not those who actually need it. No amount of transparency will ever change this. Free enterprise, the rule of law, and private property are the key ingredients for prosperity. These are the only principles that actually will help people in developing countries prepare for and cope with a changing climate and natural disasters, regardless of whether or not they are actually caused by man-made greenhouse gas emissions. Withdrawing from this monstrosity also demonstrates a monumental display of leadership in the United States. The media made a big to-do about the fact that the only countries not participating in the Paris Agreement are Syria and Nicaragua, but this doesn't change the fact that it's still a bad deal. Some have even argued that it's a national embarrassment for the United States to cede leadership on global warming to countries like China. But to draw a moral equivalency between the United States and China is absolutely absurd. China has serious air quality issues, not from carbon dioxide, and Beijing has reportedly falsified its coal consumption and air monitoring data, even as it participated in the Paris Agreement. There are absolutely no environmental comparisons between the United States and China. Other countries have a multitude of security, economic, and diplomatic reasons to work with America to address issues of mutual concern. Withdrawing from the agreement does not change that. What was displayed by President Trump was putting American interests first, putting the American people first, and not bowing to diplomatic pressure. And last but not least, at least for this segment, withdrawing was fantastic for the American energy competitiveness on the global scale. Regardless of whether it's conventional fuel companies or renewable ones, the best way for American energy companies to be competitive is to be innovative and competitive in the marketplace, not build their business models around an international agreement. There's absolutely nothing about leaving that agreement that prevents Americans from continuing to invest in renewable energy technologies. The market for energy is a $6 trillion industry and projected to grow by a third by 2040. Roughly 1.3 billion people do not have access to electricity, let alone reliable, affordable energy. The United States federal government and the international community should stop using other people's money to subsidize energy technologies while regulating affordable, reliable sources out of existence. The Paris Climate Agreement was the open door for future U.S. administrations to regulate and spend hundreds of millions of dollars on international climate programs, just as the Obama administration illegally did without any input from Congress. Well, that door was shut, but unfortunately, it's now open again. Alright, the last one we're going to talk about today is how Biden halted and stopped the border construction. Let me make it very clear, this has nothing to do being pro-immigration, anti-immigration. I think it's pretty safe to say that every single American out there is for pro-legal immigration. Now, I truly do understand, and I even sympathize with those who didn't have the privilege of being born inside this country. But that still doesn't negate the fact that we are a nation of laws, and these laws must be followed, including the immigration laws. Every illegal alien that is allowed into this country is a direct assault on the people who have come into this country legally, sacrificed everything just for the chance, just for the opportunity to come here. Illegal immigration in the United States costs the United States taxpayers hundreds of billions of dollars. Do you realize for less than the cost of 1 year of illegal immigration in the United States, the border wall could have been built in its entirety, saving over $1 trillion in the span of 10 years? But as you have just witnessed, Biden and his dictatorial regime have already put a stop to this wall. Not only does this endanger American families, kill American jobs, it also makes it easier for drugs and human trafficking to take place along that border. Make no mistake, my friends, the only reason why Democrats want open borders is so they have a permanent source of new Democrat voters flowing into this country so they don't have to manipulate elections in the future. Those in charge of the border wall have also said that it'll cost taxpayers billions of dollars in settlement fees. They're going to have to walk away from the areas of the wall that have already been constructed and just leave them. I mean, there was another 270 tons of American steel produced by American workers that now have to be stopped, putting more jobs at risk and ultimately more people out of work. The man has killed tens of thousands of jobs in his first 24 hours in office. It's as though the man cares nothing of the people and only serves to protect his own interests and the interests of the people pulling his strings. You know, not too long ago, Customs and Border Protection Chief Mark Morgan said that Biden is essentially sending a message to the world's immigrants that we have open borders. This will invite Central Americans to the southern border, and when he grants amnesty to them all, they will be just another wave of Democrat voters like I mentioned before. Just take a moment to listen to this federal data that the U.S. Customs revealed. The United States Customs and Border Protection field offices seized 763,192 pounds of narcotics in fiscal year 2020. And that was with the border. Can you imagine stopping this border and giving us open borders, how that is going to skyrocket? So not only is Biden saying that he's pro-illegal immigration, he's also pro-bringing narcotics into this country. The fence can cut off major corridors for smugglers, and it's a force multiplier for the Border Patrol that either stops crossing attempts or slows them down enough for agents to respond. Thank you for listening today. Please like, share, and subscribe, as I am a new channel and I'd really like to continue this. If there's any topics that you would like featured, please mention them in the comments below. This is America's Republic Under Siege. Thank you and take care.